The autumn wind howled through the streets as Emily strolled through the flea market with her mother. She wasn't particularly thrilled to be there, but the eclectic mix of trinkets and treasures had a peculiar charm she couldn't deny. Her mother was bargaining with a vendor over some antique teacups when Emily's eyes fell on a doll resting on a dusty wooden shelf. The doll was unsettlingly beautiful. It wore a tattered lace dress that might have once been white, but had aged to a dull yellow. Its porcelain skin was flawless, except for a faint crack running from its left temple to its cheek. But it was the doll's eyes that drew Emily in. They were a piercing blue, eerily lifelike, and seemed to glint in the dim light as if they were watching her. A chill ran down her spine. "That's an old one," came a raspy voice. Emily turned to see the stall owner, an elderly woman with a hunched back and a knowing smile. "Belonged to a little girl long ago. Poor thing passed away. The doll, well, it's all that's left of her." Emily hesitated. She wasn't sure why, but she felt compelled to take the doll home. It was as if the doll had chosen her. "How much?" she asked. The old woman's eyes twinkled. "For you, dear, just $5, but be careful. It's not like other dolls." Emily handed over the money and took the doll, ignoring the woman's cryptic warning. "Thanks," she muttered, cradling the doll in her arms. That night, Emily placed the doll on her bookshelf, facing her bed. She felt uneasy under its unblinking gaze, but she shrugged it off. After all, it was just a doll. Turning off the light, she settled into bed and drifted into a restless sleep. In the middle of the night, she woke suddenly. The room was deathly quiet, except for the sound of her own breathing. Something felt wrong. She turned on her bedside lamp and glanced at the bookshelf. Her heart skipped a beat. The doll was no longer sitting upright. It was leaning forward, its head tilted slightly, as if it were staring straight at her. Emily's stomach churned. "It must have fallen over," she whispered to herself. Gathering her courage, she got up, straightened the doll, and went back to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt as though she was being watched. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. The doll seemed to move on its own. Emily would leave it on the bookshelf and find it on her desk. She dismissed it at first, blaming her younger brother Jack. But Jack swore he hadn't touched it. "You're just trying to scare me," she accused him. Jack rolled his eyes. "I don't even like dolls. That thing's creepy." Creepy didn't begin to describe it. Emily started noticing other oddities. The doll's blue eyes seemed to follow her whenever she moved around the room. Its painted smile appeared wider, almost sinister. And then there were the whispers. Late at night, when the house was silent, Emily could swear she heard faint whispers in her voice, coming from the doll's direction. "Emily!" The first time she heard it, she froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She convinced herself it was her imagination, but the whispers grew louder with each passing night. One night, unable to take it anymore, Emily grabbed the doll and stuffed it into her closet. "You're just a stupid doll," she said aloud, as if trying to convince herself. Slamming the closet door shut, she crawled into bed, relieved to finally be free of its gaze. But at 3 a.m, she woke to a loud thud. Her heart raced as she turned on the light. The closet door was wide open, and the doll was sitting in the middle of the floor, its head tilted and its eyes locked on her. Emily screamed, waking the entire household. Her mother rushed in, groggy and annoyed. "What's going on?" "The doll! It moved!" Emily cried, pointing at it. Her mother sighed. "Emily, it's just a doll. You probably left it there and forgot." "No, I put it in the closet." "Enough," her mother said firmly. "Get some sleep." After her mother left, Emily reluctantly picked up the doll and placed it back on the bookshelf. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent was watching her. The next morning, Emily was exhausted. She decided to get rid of the doll. Taking it to the backyard, she dug a hole and buried it deep. "Good riddance," she muttered, patting the dirt down. That night, she slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. But her relief was short-lived. When she woke up, the doll was sitting on her nightstand, its cracked porcelain face inches from hers. That night, she slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. But her relief was short-lived. When she woke up, the doll was sitting on her nightstand, its cracked porcelain face inches from hers. Desperate, Emily confided in her best friend, Mia. Mia was skeptical, but agreed to help. "Maybe it's cursed or something," Mia said, half-jokingly. "We should burn it." That evening, the two girls took the doll to an abandoned lot and built a small fire. As the flames roared, Emily hesitated. For a moment, she thought she saw the doll's expression change, its eyes narrowing in anger. "Do it," Mia urged. Emily threw the doll into the fire. The flames engulfed it, and for a moment, she felt a sense of victory. But then, an ear-piercing scream erupted from the fire. It was her own voice, distorted and filled with agony. The girls stumbled back, horrified, as the fire extinguished itself, leaving the doll unscathed. From that night on, the doll's torment escalated. It no longer waited for nightfall to move. Emily would find it in different rooms, mimicking her posture or holding objects she had just used. Its eyes seemed more human, and its whispers grew louder, more coherent. "You can't get rid of me," it hissed one night. "I'm part of you now." Emily's reflection in the mirror began to change. Her eyes looked glassy, her movements jerky. She started noticing cracks in her skin, faint but growing, like the doll's porcelain face. "Mia," she sobbed during a frantic phone call. "I think it's trying to turn me into it." "That's insane," Mia said, though her voice wavered. "We need to find someone who knows about this kind of stuff." They tracked down a local historian, Mr. Carver, who specialized in cursed objects. When Emily showed him the doll, his face paled. "This is no ordinary doll," he said. "It's a vessel. A spirit, angry and restless, is bound to it, and it's chosen you." "How do I stop it?" Emily pleaded. Mr. Carver shook his head. "The bond is strong. Destroying it will only strengthen the spirit. Your only hope is to return it to where it came from." Emily and Mia returned to the flea market, but the old woman's stall was gone. They searched for hours, asking vendors if they knew where she was. Finally, a man pointed them to a rundown house on the edge of town. The house was dark and foreboding. The air felt heavy as they approached the door. Emily knocked, and after a long pause, the old woman appeared. Her expression was grave when she saw the doll. "I warned you," she said. "The doll doesn't belong here. It belongs with her." "Who?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "The girl who made it," the woman replied. "She's waiting." The woman gave them cryptic directions to an abandoned cemetery deep in the woods. "Place the doll on her grave. Only then will you be free." The journey to the cemetery was harrowing. The woods seemed alive, whispering and shifting as they ventured deeper. Shadows darted between the trees, and the faint sound of giggling echoed in the distance. Emily clutched the doll tightly, her knuckles white with fear. Finally, they found the grave, a crumbling headstone with the name Clara etched into it. Emily placed the doll on the grave and stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ground trembled, and a shadowy figure emerged. It was a young girl, her face identical to the doll's, but twisted with rage. "You took me away," the spirit hissed. "You tried to burn me. Now you'll stay with me forever." Emily screamed as the spirit lunged at her, but Mia, quick thinking, threw a circle of salt around them. The spirit recoiled, shrieking in fury. The doll's face cracked further, pieces falling off and sinking into the ground. The spirit let out a final wail before fading into the darkness,